My name is Stacy Strickland, and in this presentation, I will be dissecting my iTech 7430 lesson plan. During this lesson, students will be learning about partitioning rectangles and circles into 2 and 4 equal parts. To complete this lesson, students will be able to explain the meaning of partition, how to partition both shapes into halves and fourths effectively, and identify real-life examples of rectangles and circles that can be or are partitioned. Mastery of this standard is a crucial component to working with fractions in third grade, so it's important that students can demonstrate understanding of partitioning. And because this lesson will be taught through digital or remote learning, students will use technology to achieve and demonstrate learning and produce artifacts. Students will watch mini lessons that have been pre-recorded through Screencast-O-Matic using a web whiteboard. Students will also use Nearpod to demonstrate knowledge through various forms of assessment and question types. As a final product, students will use Google Slides to collaboratively present real-life objects that typically require being partitioned or divided to be used. And as a reflection piece, students will use Google Forms to rate their understanding as well as reflect on the instruction itself. Many lessons were pre-recorded through Screencast-O-Matic using a web whiteboard, but I also hosted small groups 3 days per week for 2 weeks. Those small groups lasted for 30 minutes, and those were hosted through Google Meets. Here you can see an example of one of the screencasts that was recorded over a web whiteboard where I was discussing equal parts with students. Students also had many opportunities to practice through Nearpod. They had a Nearpod every day after our small group session and the mini lessons where they answered a variety of questions. They did drawing, multiple choice, and open-ended. Here we have an example of a Nearpod students had to complete. All they had to do was sign in with their name and join the session. Once they did that, any instructional material was always at the front of the Nearpod, and then they clicked through to answer any questions. So this is an example of a draw it question where they had to draw a circle and partition it into halves. There was also a resource for them here as well if they needed a reminder. Students' final product after 5 days of instruction was a collaborative Google Slides presentation. So they worked together on a single Google Slides presentation where they took pictures in their own homes of items that were in the shape of a rectangle and a square, but things that had to typically be partitioned to be used. Here's an example that I used with the students to kind of show them the expectation. So one student would upload a picture of a rectangle that had to be partitioned into quarters, and then this was one in halves. So real life objects that were typically partitioned that way. Once all students finished the final day during our Google Meet session, I took the Google Slides presentation and presented it to all of them. And when they saw their slides, their job was to present their slides and give me reasons that they knew their shapes were partitioned effectively. The final part of this lesson was a Google Forms reflection where students reflected on their understanding and the lesson itself. Here's a copy of the lesson reflection form that students were sent to their GCPS email that they could answer and turn in to me. Because this lesson took place over remote learning and digital learning, there were a few challenges that we faced. Technology access was an issue for some. One was working off a school-issued laptop that wasn't very reliable when it came to camera and microphone. And then also Google Meet sessions, there were some days where not all of the students were able to attend. In order to counteract that, all lessons in Google Meets were recorded so that if they did happen to miss, they could go back and rewatch. This also left a lot of room for opportunities. Obviously, one of the first things that I would like to do is readjust to in-person teaching, which would include a lot more hands-on practice with geoboards. And then it would also help with the collaboration, making sure that students are actually talking with each other and building ideas off of each other. Collaborating over Google was great for the students and they were able to work on one project, but being able to work together on that project at the same time leaves a lot of potential for students to make better products in the end. Additionally, a whole group is the ideal situation for this. I only worked with 3 students, so being able to do this with a whole group would make a lot more room for meaningful learning. Overall, this project taught myself and my students a lot about using multiple tools for one lesson. So I hope to take everything that we learned from this experience and use it moving forward in real life teaching.